COVID-19 recovery, helping Hoosiers recover financially, physically, mentally, and socially through services provided by Community Action of Greater Indianapolis. Services include energy assistance, child care, family support, education, training programs, transitional housing, and food assistance. COVID-19 recovery.
Hello, I'm Terrence White of Community Action of Greater Indianapolis.
And I'm Kelly Vaughn of WHMB TV 40, and of course the co-host here on COVID-19 recovery. And Terrence, you and I both own homes, and we've been through that process of getting the loan.
The big loan.
Ooh, gosh. I think back then, I don't think I'd ever want to go through that again, but obviously there are people out there who are doing that, and it's a strange thing. All the things we've been going through with COVID-19, and obviously the hurt and the pain and people dying, yet there are other things that are growing and booming, and one of them, oddly enough, is the housing market. And with all that going on, have you thought much about making a move to sell or to buy again?
I thought about it, honestly. You know, people, brokers, realtors, they're calling, they're saying, your house is worth X amount. I think they even said 300, 400,000 or something like that, which, you know, my ears perked up or whatnot. And ultimately I decided to just kind of hold steadfast and not do anything right now, but it definitely caused me to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to cause a lot of folks to think about getting that loan, because we have Diana Rice Wilkerson, who is a loan officer for Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation, and she is also the co-star of the Home and Finance Show here on WHMB TV 40, which airs, it's 9:30 a.m., right, Diana?
Right.
Okay, on Tuesdays here on TV 40. Don't miss it, because they're all about building wealth through home ownership. Welcome to the show, Diana.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Okay, so, where to start with this one? You would think we're in a pandemic, people have lost jobs, nothing's moving, but it seems like in the housing and loan industry, things are blowing up. What's going on?
Things are really blowing up, and who would have thunk it, as people would say, you know, because of COVID-19, like you said, it just created a lot of problems, especially around folks' work. But at the end of the day, everyone needs a place to live at the end of the day. So it is still the one single asset that can really make a difference in the lives of folks. They get out of the rent cycle. Personally, I believe that the increase in rent, has been the one key factor that has caused people to still want to buy a house. Because the average rent, I think, is like $1,200 or $1,300. And
wow.
So, and you know, for a lot of folks, they're like, oh, they just never could see that they could own a house. But as the rent has increased so rapidly, they're now saying, if I can pay this each month, then I can pay a mortgage payment, you know? And that is very, very true. It's given them the confidence to stick their toe in the water. And so we actually, all day long, literally all day long, all I am doing is pre-approving people to buy houses. And it's a good thing to see, and yet we struggle with the fact that there's limited housing out there. But we're just encouraging people to continue to, position yourself to buy, get ready, because everything cycles. You know, right now we're in this space where we have limited housing, and yet there's a lot of folks working on how do we correct that. So you want to be ready when the time comes.
Okay, so now let me ask you this. You mentioned people getting ready. So how do we get ready to apply for a home loan? What do we need to have in order?
A good, very, very good question. So the first step is going to be credit. Credit is basically our financial report card. It tells how we handle our debts. I would encourage people to, if you're not checking on your credit score online, do so. Now, keep in mind, this is going to be kind of like talking out of both sides of my mouth, in that, number one, you do want to keep tabs on your credit score, but number two, which makes it confusing, that is not the score banks use. And while it's not the score banks use, it's still an indication. You want to watch the movement. If the score is going up or down, even though it may be a different score used by the bank, our score is probably going up and down as well. So number one, kind of plug yourself into a site. You know, separate from the scores, in most cases, most sites, like myfico.com for real comes to mind, and even Credit Karma and some of the others, most of them have a lot of good information about what credit scoring is, what goes into a score, where you should really focus your attention if you're trying to improve your credit. Some of them have simulators, which a simulator is your ability to go in and say, what if I pay down this debt? How would it affect my credit? So credit will always be one of the pieces of the pie when it comes to making a lending decision, because it tells us how you honor your debts. And it also tells us if you've been in a situation where maybe you had some financial struggles. And if you have had financial struggles, do not conclude that that disqualifies you for a loan. It does not. You know, where you want to go is you want to now work out of that situation, because for all intents and purposes, you might even still be in that situation. Just work your way out of that situation, get on stable ground. And as you make your payments on time, your credit score will inch up, you know, very gradually. But those are some of just the basic things. There's been a real focus on scoring now. So a lot of folks are just looking at those sites and getting the scores and running with it. That's probably not the best practice. Best practice is to really read and educate yourself around credit.
So what about our lower income households, specifically the first-time home buyers? What should they be doing outside of looking at their credit score to prepare them for their first home purchase?
So one of the things I would say they want to do, there are two things. Number one, before you buy a vehicle, before you sign on the dotted line for a vehicle, reach out to the lender that you're going to work with. It may take you talking to a couple of different lenders. You can always call me, but reach out to the lender that you're going to be working with, even if your plan is to buy in 2 years or like a year from now or 3 years. Get started. Let someone look at your credit and advise you on how to position yourself so that you can work toward being ready when the time comes. First-time home buyers, what I find a lot of time that really impacts their ability to buy what they want is they have a really significant car payment. And so, you know, I belong to a group called the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, and they have this initiative called the house before the car. Now, we know people need the car to go to work to pay for the house, but it's still, we're just trying to elevate the thinking around, do I buy my dream car now? You know, I've got this great job, let me buy my dream car, then let me buy my house. Well, that dream car payment may truly impact you in such a way you can't afford the house you want. So that's one. Number two, credit card debt. It only takes a couple of credit cards for you to manage properly. It only takes a couple of credit cards managed properly for you to get into those 700 scores. Not that 700 is needed nor necessary for loan approval, but the point is lots of folks kind of think that, and what they kind of think is the more credit I have that I pay on time, the higher my score, which is our logical minds in this process. And I have this saying, don't use your logical mind in the lending process. I promise you it will not work. So what you want to do is like 1 or 2 credit cards, 2 is ideal, and paying those in a way that boosts your score. Well, what is that, Diana? I'm just going to tell you, a couple of credit cards with $300 limits, charging $10 each month, pay the bill once the statement comes in, not before. It will work wonders on your score. It's not whether your line of credit is $5,000 or $10,000. Say Kelly has a line of $20,000 and my line is $3,000. It's really not that goes into the mix. What goes into the mix is, of your limit, what is your utilization? How much are you using? Because a credit card is still a debt. It is a debt. It is you borrowing from yourself or from this card because you at this time don't have the money and you're going to pay it back relatively quickly. So with that said, even though there's this limit, And your logical mind wants to say, well, if I stay within my limit and I pay on time, I'm going to have good credit. That is not the case. So a $300 credit card is just the best credit card to have, quite frankly, because it keeps you from getting extended with credit. And if you just charge $10 a month, it's going to do wonders for your score.
Okay, I would think that a lot of people looking to buy a home, though, and are getting a little frustrated because obviously the rates are really low and now's the time to get in. If you haven't done your homework prior to now, it takes a while for some of those changes to occur, right, in terms of seeing your score increase. So is there anything we can do to speed up that process of impacting our scores?
The quickest, fastest way to increase your score is pay down a credit card. It has an immediate impact. As soon as that new balance is reported to the credit bureau, your score goes up. The only other thing and I work with this on a regular basis, so I understand the question, and where I've seen credit go up pretty quickly is removing a negative item off the report. And when I say removing a negative item, I mean removing the negative account. And so typically we're talking collection accounts at this point. So if you have a bank credit card and you've paid that bank credit card not so well, and you bring it current, okay, and you make your payments on time for a few months, that is really not going to have a huge impact on your score, because it's a debt you signed on the dotted line for, and you for whatever reason found yourself in this financial strain, and your credit score is now reflecting that. So paying on time is not going to erase that, because that's history. It's going to stay there. It will get better over time, but it will not go away when you bring the account current or pay the account down. You may get a little boost in your score, but it's not going to make a huge impact. What makes a huge impact, I'm going to give you an example, would be a couple of examples. A medical debt, for example. Medical debts, when they hit the credit report, they are a collection account. So when they come into the report, it's collection. Utility bills, used to be library cards, and library bills. I don't see that so much anymore, but cell phone still, cable company still, medical debt still. Sometimes small rental balances, if someone leaves an apartment or a home and they, something like that. Okay, those are collection accounts, and they impact your score in a big way. If you pay the card or pay the account and get it removed from the report, then that's like it never happened, right? Because it's gone. You will see an immediate boost on your score.
So the key there is that when you're writing these people who are sending the collection letter, pay them, but don't just pay them, write them a letter and say, if I pay you this, use that as leverage, right, will you take this off? And right, they oftentimes will agree to that. We are out of time, Diana. I can't believe it. And so we're just like Janice Bradley, we're going to have you back, because obviously there's so much more information, and this is an ongoing recovery process through this COVID-19 pandemic. But we appreciate you so much for coming on and enlightening us.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful day.
You do the same.
You too. Diana Rice Wilkerson, who is a loan officer for Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back with more here on COVID-19 Recovery.
During the COVID-19 emergency, community action agencies are open and here to ensure the well-being of families across the country. For over 50 years, we've been delivering life-changing services, solutions, and stability.
Serving Boone, Hamilton, Hendricks, and Marion counties, be sure to visit our website to learn about employment and education opportunities, food, housing, transportation assistance, and more. Apply today by calling 317-396-1800.
And we're back here on COVID-19 Recovery, and we're going to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on our children. And joining us via Zoom is Dr. Eric Yancey, a pediatrician here in Indianapolis. Welcome, Dr. Yancey.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
We appreciate you coming on, and we've got a ton of questions for you about children and COVID-19, and especially when it comes to this vaccine. But what's the latest on children and the virus itself? Initially, it was they can't get it, and it seems to me recent news stories, that's changed some, no?
That has. Early on, early in the course of it, we noticed a strange phenomenon that children seem to be really resistant to any significant level of illness from the vaccine. But we're talking like a year ago here. And there's a lot of different theories about that. Some of the receptors that the virus would attach to were not as well developed in children. A lot of different things were looked at. Well, but we did find out about 4 to 6 months in that there was certainly a lot of very serious illnesses. I shouldn't say a lot, but there were a number of serious illnesses that developed in children that were more common in children. An inflammatory syndrome that kind of involved a lot of multi-organs, multi-systems failure and things like that in children. So some really catastrophic changes in children. But still the level of attack, the number of attack, the amount of attack in children was not the same. But now we're looking at a situation where we're seeing a number of variants come out. And so we are seeing some of the ones that are affected become younger. And we are seeing occasionally some pretty significant disease in certainly teens and even in some younger children. So we're just not sure what these variants are going to do. We know that they have slightly different markers, and they can actually attack where maybe the original strain didn't. So I think that yes, the children continue to be at a level of risk that is more than we want to see, but it's very difficult to say. And if I get to talking too much, you just shut me. But
no, that's fine. I guess, when the pandemic first hit, it seems to me that had children been affected, this whole issue of social distancing and masking would have, it would, yeah, everybody's going to wear a mask and everybody's going to social distance. But when the children weren't in the mix, we're all grown and we don't care about old people. Did you notice that?
I noticed it to some degree. In fact, I saw a couple of comments on posts and things, and it basically came out to paraphrase, well, yeah, they may die, but they're old anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of a sentiment. But I think that, to be honest with you, the biggest problem about the masking and the distancing was that the initial statement was that it would protect other people. And so that then played into a certain level of self-centeredness that, okay, if it doesn't affect me, I'm not really worried about it. And so I'm not so sure that it would have made a big difference with the children anyway at that point if they had been sick, because the early message was that wear the mask to protect someone else. And as awful as it sounds, that's just not a lot of people's priority. If you had said there was a cloud of chlorine gas that was going to descend on the city or the nation or whatever, and that you had to wear this mask, or if you walked outside, you were going to die, we would have had probably 99% compliance with the mask mandates, because everybody goes like, oh, I don't want to die. But since we made it to where, oh, you're going to affect other people, it's like, well, they can fend for themselves. I think that was a part of that. And I mean, as much as you hate to say that, that's a part of it, okay? Yeah. We're self-centered.
And I never understood that, because it would worry me to death if I was around somebody and I had it, or I didn't know I had it and I gave it to them, or even just thinking that they might think that I gave it to them. That would drive me crazy. So I'd just rather wear it so they can never come back and say, oh, you had it. And I visited my brother once and I had my mask on, but it still bothered me when I left. Like, if he did get something, he's going to think I gave it to him, even with the mask on. So to me, the best way is just put the thing on, and I don't have to worry about that. I couldn't sleep at night thinking that I had given it to somebody, and what if one of those people you give it to dies?
Yeah, well, that's an ideal, I think, to which we should all aspire, but I just don't think we're there yet. I think we're we're just not there. Okay. And so, what I'm seeing, like I said, go back to the virus for a minute. It's just tough to know what this thing is going to do because it's new. The virus itself was new. The novel coronavirus was new. Now we're seeing variants of the new. So there's nobody that can tell you exactly what's going to happen because we don't have a track record. So the best thing to do is protect from as many strains as you can, because the one thing that is effective in actually decreasing all strains, variants, and everything else is the mask. Okay, the mask actually, I mean, no matter what kind of strain it is, what variation of that strain, if it can't get effectively through the mask, you're still protected.
Okay.
So what about some of the psychological impact issues as it relates to juveniles?
The situation psychologically and from the emotional standpoint has been nothing short of devastating. We've seen roughly a 33% increase in young people, children and adolescents, presenting to emergency facilities with acute situations of anxiety, acute onset of depressive episodes, suicidality. I mean, those kind of things. That because the problem is we never could say, and hopefully we see a light at the end of the tunnel now, but early on we couldn't say when it was going to end. You can deal with something if you have a mark to say this is when it's going to end. Okay, if I have something that's particularly painful to you and I said this is going to be painful for an hour and then it's going to go away. Okay, 59 minutes and counting, 58 minutes and counting. But if I just say to you, this is going to hurt, and I have no idea to tell you when it's going to stop hurting, that creates a lot of anxiety. So what happened in the children was, unlike things that we could predict, the tornadoes, the hurricanes, other natural disasters, we couldn't really give them an idea of how long you're going to be locked down, how long you're going to be away from your friends, how long is everybody going to be kind of walking around, with all the distancing, how long before you can get back to your activities. And so that just created more anxiety. Then, of course, the other thing that was occurring, because the children were inside, away from school, and watching television pretty much 24/7, all of the other things that played in, the social injustices, the things that they were seeing on a continual basis, just tended to increase those levels of anxiety. So it was really the perfect storm of how to create incredible anxiety and depression in young people. You got a situation that's new. We don't know what's going on, how long it's going, exactly all the ins and outs of it. We don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know when we can get it in control, but yet and still we're watching every day as people fight over mask mandates and things like that. So the children are basically saying, who is running this show? And so at that point,
What is wrong with the adults?
Where are, and so when that happens, just kind of wander, and they're very upset.
Okay. So I want to ask you, Dr. Yancey, about
Sure.
children getting a shot. Should kids get the shot?
I would say that when it's actually tested down to that level, then yes, absolutely. I recommend it down to that level. Now, right now, it's been the studies have gone down to 16 and 18-year-olds. I think 16 with Pfizer, 18 with Moderna. So yes, I'd recommend the 16-year-olds get it. There is a couple of things that have given parents pause. There was something on the internet about the shot in infertility, not substantiated by any means. It doesn't have there's no mechanism by which you could get infertility from the shot, no mechanism. So I would say the more people we can get vaccinated with an immunity, that will decrease the spread. And if you can decrease the community spread, we're much more likely to get back to normal in a certain period of time. And the children we can then decrease their anxiety. These children have lost clearly a year of school, but there's some educators who say that these children probably lost more than a year of school when we look at what's happening. So I'd say, yes, let's vaccinate as many people as possible. It's safe, it's effective, and I think it's absolutely something we need to do.
Are you seeing cases in your office, and how common is that to have a kid come in who has been infected, and how are they? Do any of them get seriously ill?
Well, we actually do a lot of telemedicine now, so we don't actually bring a lot of them in. So what we'll do, but yes, I've talked to a number of parents, a lot of parents whose children have had mild to moderate symptoms. They have flu-like illnesses and things like that. Some of the ones with more acute illnesses that we've talked to, now they got a fever 105. Now they, got this strange rash. Now they won't, it's hard to arouse them. Well, we send those straight to the hospital with that notification that this could be coming in. So I have not personally seen very many. that were critically ill, but we've seen quite a few who had like mild to moderate illness. But the problem with that is that no one knows what the long-term consequences are. So we do know that the recommendations from some of the governing bodies in cardiology and pediatric cardiology have recommended that children who had even mild to moderate symptoms before they would return to very intense sports get an EKG to look at whether or not there was any heart muscle damage that occurred during that illness that they recovered from. So we routinely get a lot of EKGs looking for any evidence of heart, or what we call heart muscle or myocardial damage from even that milder infection, because we know it can occur. So just because the children are not showing up, thankfully, thank God they're not showing up in the death statistics, but we don't really know down the line if there are other things going on that we may not see for 5 years, that we may not see for 10 years. And so therefore, that's why it's reasonable still, if you can avoid getting this infection, avoid it. And right now, the best way to avoid it is by getting a shot.
So even if you survive, there could be long-term effects. I know Dr. Dale Geyer once told me that people who've had mononucleosis as children have long-term effects even until, when they're elderly, and you may not even realize that's what it stems from. So it's not just the virus that can do that. There are other ailments that can affect us for the long term.
And we know that from looking at some of the small vessels and things like that, some of the inflammation in the small vessels can affect every system. And so let's say you go ahead and recover from it. That's great. But do you now have, for lack of a better term, some scarring in those systems that you don't even know that you have until you reach a level of exertion, or until, is some of your reserve now capacity, is some of that actually gone? So if you can avoid it, we recommend avoiding it, because we just don't know all the ramifications of it.
Okay, we've got just a minute left. Some quick tips for people. The kids are back at school, I guess a couple of weeks ago, at least in IPS, and advice for parents when they're sending their kids off to school now and next fall.
Yeah, what I'd say is most of the children who actually get infected, believe it or not, don't get infected from other kids at school. They get infected from adults who are on the outside. So the best way to keep the kids safe in school is for the adults to stay safe on the outside. So if all the adults will stay safe and do the things that they're supposed to do, the children will be automatically safer in schools.
Sounds like a plan to me. We appreciate you coming on. Dr. Yancey, Dr. Eric Yancey, a pediatrician here in Indianapolis. Will you come back another time? Because I know we're going to have to revisit more when the time comes as we continue to recover.
I would be happy to.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Take care.
Sure. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And thank you. I'm Kelly Vaughn.
And I'm Terrence White.
And we appreciate you so much joining us on Recovery-19, COVID-19 recovery. I'll get it right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.